Tonight, SA hit by another freak summer downpour. Shops and streets underwater. What's in store tonight? The latest live. 170 k's an hour in Elle Plater's dangerous dash after doing donuts in the northern suburbs. Dozens of Boeing jets grounded in the wake of a terrifying mid-air emergency. Look but don't touch, the warning to South Australian holidaymakers amid a sparkly sea swarm at a tourist hotspot. And the young cricket fan who'll never forget the day David Warner retired.
Live from Adelaide, 7 News with Gertie Spurling.
Good evening. Parts of South Australia have been smashed again by another freak summer storm system. The downpour causing flash flooding from the west coast to the Flinders and Victor Harbour, and even closing the highway to Broken Hill.
From Port Lincoln to Hindmarsh Island, Glengowrie to the Flinders Ranges. Few parts of South Australia escaped this summer storm. Even sheltering in the Aberfoyle Park woolies wasn't an option, as the soup aisle was soaked. Experts say it's been unusually wet for our southern state.
We do tend to have a drier atmosphere in South Australia, but occasionally we do see these very moist, humid tropical conditions penetrate our state, producing some very heavy showers and thunderstorms.
It's kept emergency crews busy, with the SES responding to 120 call-outs over 2 days.
Today it's primarily been flooding, so obviously with the significant rainfall that we've had. Certainly it's a bit of an unusual one for this time of the year.
In Victor Harbour, the MFS rescued parked cars from major pooling, while parts of Coober Pedy are still without power. The Opal capital had a double dose of deluges yesterday, with lightning hitting transformers, cutting dozens from the grid. The hospital's running on backup power.
It just came in like a freight train. Years since we've seen anything like this. Absolutely crazy.
In a little over 30 hours, there were 108,000 lightning strikes in SA. Couple that with the weekend's strong winds, and SA Power Networks had 417 outages, affecting 20,000 customers.
There might be some outages that are still in certain locations as Power Networks cleans up those areas.
Near Broken Hill, floodings forced the closure of the Barrier Highway again. It only opened 5 days ago following this major freight derailment. Tonight, the Bureau's warning of severe thunderstorms in the Flinders down to the Victorian border. But the conditions shouldn't hang around for long.
Hopefully by tomorrow we'll see the worst of it move across to the eastern border, and we should be in for some cooler and drier conditions for the rest of this week.
Kimberly Pratt, 7 News.
While the wild weather pummeled our regional areas, Adelaide has largely escaped the deluge. Emily joins us now from the Torrens Weir. It's not the wet day we were expecting.
That's right, Gertie. The humid conditions have stuck around, but the heavy rainfall and severe thunderstorms have mostly avoided us here in the city. The Bureau predicted up to 15 mils to fall, but we've recorded just 0.2 mils at the West Terrace gauge. Quick short bursts of rain were seen in some suburbs. This lunchtime downpour at the Bay came and went in a matter of minutes. Much of the heavy rainfall and severe thunderstorm activity has been isolated to the Fleurieu and Kangaroo Island. It was hardly a day for bowls at Kings Cote. Cape Willoughby on KI recorded 26.6 mils in just 30 minutes this morning. Hopefully this is the last we'll see of the unseasonally wet conditions for a little while, and I'll be back with the full forecast a little later on. Gertie.
Thank you, Em. There's been an emotional tribute for champion cyclist Melissa Hoskins at the Road Cycling Nationals being held in Victoria.
Mel Hoskins, she was a world champion, a dual Olympian, but she was so much more than that. She was a mother of two, she was a friend to many. Unfortunately, Mel is no longer with us, so the entire peloton, the town of Buninyong, paid tribute to her with a minute's silence before the race got started.
The 32-year-old Olympian died after she was struck at Medindi last weekend by a car allegedly driven by her husband, Rowan Dennis. The Tour Down Under champions being charged over the incident and is due to face court in March. A 21-year-old man from the southeast has become the latest South Australian to die on our roads. His ute hit a tree last night at Mingbul, just north of Mount Gambier. He was the only person in the car. Freight train operator Pacific National is joining demands to overhaul dangerous level crossings after two of its drivers were killed in a horrific crash on the Barrier Highway last Sunday. Port Augusta's Mick Warren and Kevin Baker died when their train collided with a truck at Bindara near Broken Hill. The company wants a national summit to improve safety.
We owe it to those families, the families of Mick and Kevin, to learn as much as we can from this event to make sure that we do what we can to prevent it from ever happening again.
Pacific National is also planning a new advertising campaign to improve education around rail safety. South Australia's firefighting fleet is bulking up with next-gen trucks arriving just in time for the hottest part of summer. Crews are bracing for a potentially dangerous end to the season thanks to snowballing fuel loads.
Squeaky clean from the showroom, these new trucks signal the next phase of firefighting might.
To allow us to get right under the front line and actually support the community in the very best way possible.
The MFS is taking control of 4 hulking water warriors for Metro Adelaide, while a unit fitted out for grass fires is heading to Port Lincoln.
These are the first of this generation that have this increased water carrying capacity, up to 3,000 litres for some of the appliances, depending on how they're configured.
And later this summer, that might come in handy on the city's fringe. The wet weathers cause fuel levels to build.
Our weather outlook for the year hasn't changed. The Bureau of Meteorology still haven't revised their El Nino forecast. We still expect a long, dry, hot summer.
Firefighting appliances have a lifespan of around 20 years and are fully refurbished after 10 to make sure they're as safe as they can be.
Meanwhile, the CFS will be on high alert as we push deeper into summer. In places like Kangaroo Island, backburning has taken place in recent days to reduce the threat posed by high fuel loads.
Once that dries out and that cures, we will see a lot of high-risk weather.
Another 21 new trucks will be rolled out across the state over the next 2 years.
They are amongst the most advanced fire trucks that we see anywhere in the world.
Tom Johnson, 7 News.
An L-plater was allegedly clocked at 170 k's an hour while being chased by police through the northern suburbs last night. It started when the 24-year-old was spotted doing burnouts on Robert Road at Penfield. Police say the driver then took off. He was followed by Polair to a shopping centre at Paralawi on the way, allegedly driving on the wrong side of Heaslip Road. He's facing a string of charges and will front court tomorrow. Hundreds flocked to Glenelg today for the annual Greek Orthodox Blessing of the Waters. Organisers say it's the wettest event on record, but that didn't dampen the spirits of the faithful.
The heavens certainly opened for one of the holiest days on the Greek Orthodox calendar. Hundreds ducking for shelter anywhere they could find it. But after a half-hour rain check, nothing was stopping the faithful who lined the beach for the annual Blessing of the Waters, a time-honoured tradition dating back centuries. Then it was a mad dash into the murky water to retrieve the coveted Holy Cross, a symbol said to bring a special blessing for this 26-year-old Victor.
Well, hopefully so, but I'm very blessed in my life regardless. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I'm grateful to win it, grateful my family's here, and grateful to the church and all the volunteers to put on the event.
And just as quick as the rain came, the sun shone through.
The fact that the heavens opened up, it's a blessing. When St. John the Baptist baptized Jesus Christ on the River Jordan, the heavens opened up and the voice of God was heard.
Organisers are still hailing this year's event a success, with more than 3,000 people tipped to have attended the 2-day festival.
Every year we get a lot more and more people, which is good.
Well, look at the weather now, it's beautiful, so we can't complain. We'll be grateful for the day we've got ahead now.
Jasmine Turlings, 7 News.
Australian aviation authorities are not expected to ground planes despite their American counterparts suspending flights across the United Nations. Boeing 737 MAX 9s are not permitted to fly there after yesterday's Alaska Airlines incident that saw a plane ripped open over the country's northwest.
From pilots to air traffic control, it was decisive.
We'll have to go down.
And urgent.
Aircraft, say again. Center Alaska, copy to declaring emergency. We're descending down to 10,000.
Depressurised is what the cockpit alarms were showing, and for passengers, this was their view.
Houston. Yes, we need assistance. We've declared an emergency, and we have 177 passengers on board.
One boy learned the life-saving lesson of seatbelts.
And his shirt was sucked off him and out of the plane, and his mother was holding on to him.
An exit on this plane had been modified as wall panelling.
It's got a window and it is in the emergency exit door. It's deactivated. The problem is with this one, and the reason they're all grounded, is obviously it's not a plug-type door.
In other words, a door larger than the cavity it inhabits, which means it can't fall out.
But the aircraft was a very new aircraft, only produced and entered service a couple of months ago.
A Boeing 737 MAX plummeted in Indonesia in 2018 and Ethiopia in 2019, 400 dead. The Federal Aviation Administration in the US is tonight grounding dozens of 737 MAX 9s across the country.
We could have ended up with something so much more tragic, and we're really fortunate that did not occur here.
CASA is investigating here but has no plans to ground similar aircraft. Rob Novadia, 7 News.
Survival stories are still emerging from the rubble of Japan's devastating earthquake. A woman in her 90s has been found alive in a flattened building. She had been trapped for 5 days. It's believed she was suffering from hypothermia, but still responsive. More than 120 people have been killed in the powerful quake. A further 200 are missing. A man with a bag of knives has attacked 5 strangers as they walked through the streets of Melbourne. Witnesses watched on in horror as the 31-year-old went on a stabbing spree.
On each occasion, the victims were minding their own business. They wouldn't have even known that they were about to be attacked.
Tonight, all victims remain in hospital with at least one woman critical. Their alleged attacker will face court tomorrow. The nation's housing crisis is set to dominate federal politics again in 2024. Tonight, the Greens are threatening to sink a government scheme to help 40,000 Australians own a home unless Labor agrees to a rent freeze.
In the 2 houses of Parliament, the nation's housing woes will be front and centre again.
In 2024, Labor's housing crisis looks set to get worse for Australians.
It's a real shame that every time Labor tries to build more homes, the Greens get in the way.
Last year, it took 8 months to pass the government's Housing Australia Future Fund, the Greens holding out until negotiating $3 billion for public housing. Now they're threatening to do it again.
Stop tinkering around the edges.
The Albanese government wants to pass its Help to Buy housing scheme this year. It'll assist 40,000 people into home ownership, but the government takes a 40% equity stake in new homes, 30% for existing properties.
Which is about helping renters into the housing market.
The Coalition's housing spokesman has labelled the scheme underwhelming, meaning Labor will likely need the Greens to pass it.
We'll have a look at it, but we will push Labor to take the housing crisis seriously, to start freezing rents, building more public homes.
Housing affordability is a vote winner.
It's really hard to find a place at the moment.
I think it's got to do with lack of shortage of housing.
With 76% of Australians frustrated by a lack of action.
What you need to do is to get councils approving more stuff.
House hunters and the government will be hoping to avoid a repeat of 2023, the year from hell, when property prices jumped 8% and the official cash rate soared to 4.35%.
It's unlikely that rates will go up any further. You couldn't rule it out. If they do come down, it'll be at the end of 2024.
Josh Martin, 7 News.
Ever heard of William Webb? You mightn't know the man, but you'd certainly know the building he left behind. Webb was an American who came to Adelaide and revolutionised our train system.
What he did in that short reign of 8 years was just amazing.
But he went home with his tail between his legs. We'll tell you why later on Flashback. One young cricket fan has scored himself a piece of Australian sporting history. After his final Test appearance yesterday, David Warner handed over his helmet and gloves to Brodie Quinn. Tonight, the 12-year-old is hatching a new plan to meet his hero.
From scoring runs in his front yard to running away with a piece of Australian sporting history.
Well, that is one lucky kid. Helmet and gloves.
Brodie Quinn's still coming to terms with his good luck.
I was pretty stoked when I got it. I ran back. It was a good opportunity to get it when he was walking out of his last test match.
At the SCG for David Warner's last test, the 12-year-old thought he'd try for the batsman's gloves.
And he saw the boy get it at lunch that he thought, I'm going to go back down there and see what I can get.
He made the run to the fence with dozens of others.
Warner, please give me your gloves. And I was like, Warner, here, please.
Returning to his shocked family with not just gloves, but the batsman's helmet.
Very sweaty. It stunk.
The family's walls were already lined with cricketing memorabilia. A Shane Warne piece hangs by Brodie's bed, but Warner's helmet and gloves now take pride of place.
I think it takes the cake, really. I think this is it's the uniqueness of it really probably beats anything that we've got. It's really special to have.
Not content on simply owning the gear, young Brodie now wants David Warner to sign it. He'll be back here at the SCG on Friday to watch Warner play in the BBL and is intent on tracking him down.
I want to try and get him to sign it, sign the helmet, sign the gloves, and then get it framed somehow.
Jodie Lee, 7 News.
Well, that is...
I reckon Brodie might have been so excited he slept in the helmet and gloves.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know who could make a frame for a helmet. Maybe there's a very small
There must
market
be
in that.
someone could do it, possibly. Anything for Brodie.
Yeah, I love his ambition.
What's coming up in sport, Tom?
Well, one of the front runners to replace David Warner at the top of the order, Gertie, is Cameron Bancroft, and he's spoken about his ambitions and also opens up on how Sandpapergate has changed him as a player and a person. And our exclusive with power swingman Ryan Beaton, how he plans to make the cut in Port's backline after an up and down 2023. That's all coming up, Gertie.
Thanks, Tom. Kangaroo Island's been overrun by a swarm of majestical creatures. Next, see the stunning ocean spectacle, plus what swimmers need to know. Also ahead, new video released as the US marks a sombre anniversary. A tornado barrels through Florida, whipping up mayhem and sending sparks flying. And the cost of meat and veg in the spotlight as Sam Kekovich fronts a multi-generational campaign. There's been a magical and potentially dangerous bloom of jellyfish at a popular South Australian tourist spot. A local diver has caught the spectacular sight on camera while exploring along the northern coast of Kangaroo Island.
It's a breathtaking sight few will see in their lifetime. A New Year's celebration of a different kind in the underwater playground off KI.
At certain points, it was almost like swimming through just a soup of jellyfish. It could be a bit unnerving. It was overall magical.
A group from the Flinders University Underwater Club met with the rare sight while diving over the past week.
It's because of the strong wind blowing them in. That's what we were thinking is why they were so concentrated there.
It's the right combination of ingredients in the ocean, the correct temperature, salinity, the right amount of food, and it's all there just right for the jellyfish to go wild and reproduce.
They're Australian sea nettles, a type of jellyfish classified by Dr. Lisa Gershwin.
I know quite a bit about this guy, and I've never seen these kinds of numbers. It's just gobsmacking.
And while they're beautiful to look at, you mustn't touch them.
It does sting. Its common name is sea nettle. We have no knowledge at all of it being life-threatening, but the truth is, we don't know. We haven't seen these kind of numbers before.
It's unclear when we'll see a bloom this size again, but if you do catch a glimpse of them out in the water, make sure you're well protected.
It became apparent that they weren't able to sting through our wetsuits very quickly. Do wear at least a rash guard or a wetsuit, otherwise you'll regret it.
Ashley Kanowski, 7 News.
Incredible pictures. 3 years on from the January 6 riots in Washington, D.C., former President Donald Trump has gone from defending the rioters to using them as campaign props. He's hoping that will help him return to the White House. But tonight, new video from that day reveals a different outlook.
It's the rioters' perspective 3 years on. trying to breach the door leading into the House chamber.
Go find another door, everybody.
Barricaded inside, members of Congress guarded by armed Capitol Police officers.
You guys are not going to lose a paycheck if we come in the building, man.
The pro-Trump rioters stormed the United States Capitol in the wake of his election defeat. Tonight, it's part of his rallying cry as he campaigns for re-election.
But if you're with us, they put you in jail. Look at what's happened with the J6 hostages. The hostages, that's a horrible thing.
He called the riot peaceful before comparing it to immigrants crossing into the US illegally.
When you talk about insurrection, what they're doing, that's the real deal. That's the real deal, not patriotically and peacefully.
Some so-called leaders still tried to mislead and gaslight by claiming it was a peaceful protest.
USA! USA!
The former president has his own legal challenges tied to that day. He faces a federal indictment for his role in trying to overturn the 2020 results, and the US Supreme Court will decide if he can be banned from state ballots for engaging in insurrection. Despite his mounting legal battles, he remains the Republican frontrunner. In the United States, Miley Hogan, 7 News.
Fort Lauderdale in Florida has felt the force of a tornado which produced a dramatic light show. Sparks flew from power lines, flashing as the twister barreled through the US city. No injuries have been reported, and despite the wild scenes, the damage is minor. The addictive drug surging in popularity that has police and paramedics seriously worried what SA parents need to know. Plus, multiple brawls break out at a car festival. Punters trade blows with security guards. A pizzeria goes up in flames north of the city, the hunt for the firebug. And looking for a career change, Australia's iconic southernmost pub hits the market. The hunt is on for an arsonist who set fire to a pizza shop at Salisbury East this morning. The suspects smashed their way through the back door of Little Anthony's on Gloucester Avenue around 5 a.m. MFS crews quickly extinguished the fire. Police want to hear from anyone in the area who may have dash cam from that time of the morning. There are fresh warnings tonight over the so-called party drug ketamine. It's linked to mental illness, but surging in popularity because it's cheaper than alternatives.
Triple K, Special K, Kim Kardashian, Kettenheimer and Ketamine Street. These signs were brought along to last week's Lost Paradise Festival and very openly celebrate the popular drug.
Dance Fires has seen an increase in ketamine presentations, a very large amount of fake ketamine going around.
It contributed to the death of Friends star Matthew Perry, but what is ketamine? It's a dissociative drug that targets the brain, creating a sense of detachment from reality. Similar to psychedelics, it can cause hallucinations and disorientation. It's typically used by doctors and veterinarians as an anaesthetic. But when bought on the street, there are risks.
They have a bit of a euphoria, a bit of a high, and then they act like dum-dums. They fall into a pool and drown. They walk in front of a car.
And personal and party use has been on the rise, with people in their 20s the most common users.
Whilst we're thinking now about what happens today, people can have longer-term issues.
Ketamine might be cheaper than some other drugs, and it's being studied for its effectiveness in treating depression. But that doesn't necessarily make it safer.
Kind of got this street cred that it might be a little bit better for you than something like cocaine or heroin. But in fact, the kind of ketamine that you're going to be getting on the street, I've got no idea what's in it.
Amy Clements, 7 News.
5 children are reportedly among those killed by a Russian missile strike in eastern Ukraine. Kyiv is accusing Moscow of cynically hitting civilians after the shelling attack on the outskirts of Donetsk. Ukraine claims 11 people were killed and 10 more were wounded. It also claims to have evidence missiles fired into Kharkiv last week were supplied by North Korea. Christmas for most of us was 13 days ago, but right now it's time for Orthodox Christians to celebrate. Millions have gathered for services across the world, particularly in Eastern Europe. That includes Russia, but churches in Ukraine now observe the holy day on December 25 to distance themselves from Russian traditions. Disgusting and Neanderthal. That is how witnesses describe a wild brawl that marred the end of a major motorsport festival in Canberra. Security guards traded punches with rowdy revellers in a brutal end to the popular summer nats.
His high-vis vest reads crowd safety. His actions, anything but. A security officer dishes out a punch to a punter before retreating to his pack. It doesn't end there. What appears to be the same officer captured here firing off a round of uppercuts before one hell of a hook. And again. And again. It's not a boxing event you are watching, it's the annual Summer Nats Car Festival in Canberra yesterday. Security guards versus revellers. The sound of screaming crowds fast drowning out any engines. This reveller ambushed by 5 security officers and dragged along the ground. Witnesses pulling out their mobile phones in disbelief.
Security smashing into him. That's wrong, man. I've got it on video. 10 security on one guy.
We had nowhere to go, so I had to go and run and stand on top of a table. It was definitely an unsafe feeling, and especially when it's with the people that are meant to be, keeping you safe.
The string of brawls out of control. Until eventually the officers involved are ushered out into a waiting van. Security company Red Dawn's Facebook shut down today. No response to our inquiries. While this statement from Summer Nats: we are conducting a full investigation into the incident with our private security contractor and the police. Once we know what happened, we can take action from an event management perspective and the police can take action. So far, no arrests have been made. Grace Fitzgibbon, 7 News.
The surprising story behind a North Terrace landmark. Up next on Flashback, a ride into the roaring 20s, how the Adelaide railway station came to be. Also ahead, how Lamb is helping close Australia's generation gap in Sam Kekovich's latest campaign. And a man caught skinny dipping in the strangest of places. The latest annual lamb campaign has been launched off the back of a record summer of red meat sales. But some farmers are claiming consumers are being ripped off, now waging war with the supermarkets and calling for intervention.
Good morning, Boomtown. A fictional tale of a very real struggle.
Watch out for the generation gap.
Classic boomers, making the gap bigger.
The recurring red meat gag.
Is that lamb?
Bringing everyone together.
An iconic Australian unifying catalyst. It's a great Australian barbecue full of succulent Australian lamb.
Lamb hasn't been more affordable than it is right now in the last 4 to 5 years.
This graph shows retail prices of beef and lamb almost tripling since the year 2000, with a slight drop last year.
We saw a 60% reduction in beef and sheep prices in June, and now we're seeing fruit prices and veggie prices are falling through the floor, but the prices at the checkout still haven't.
Farmers tell us shoppers are getting ripped off.
The consumer should be getting my zucchinis at a better price.
It costs Ross Marcelino $2 to produce a kilo of zucchinis. Supermarkets buy them for $2.20. Shoppers pay almost $7.
And there's no profit. Probably looking at pulling the pin this year and not growing next year.
The number of growers either going broke or committing suicide in this country is unprecedented.
The Nationals are tonight renewing calls for an ACCC supermarket inquiry in place of the Senate inquiry already underway.
That's all about lifting the level of transparency from supermarkets about the prices they're paying farmers, their other suppliers.
Tom Hartley, 7 News.
These days, it's probably best known as the home of the casino, but it was once known as Webb's Palace. On Flashback tonight, the story behind Adelaide Railway Station, once considered the most magnificent in the Commonwealth.
It's been a landmark on North Terrace since 1928, one of our finest public buildings. A very, very large and impressive building.
This magnificent building provides all the facilities of a first-class restaurant, in addition to the other requirements for passenger traffic.
And it's an American we can thank for its grandeur. William Webb moved to Adelaide in 1922 to be the Commissioner of Railways. He inherited a system that was falling apart.
It was often talked about as being the worst in Australia, and within 4, 6, 8 years it was one of the best railway systems in the Southern Hemisphere.
Bob Sampson runs the National Railway Museum at Port Adelaide, but has a connection with the Adelaide station going back to 1972, when he started as a youth porter.
And the railway station was certainly a different place then than now.
That was back in the days when red hens ruled the rails, interstate trains came into the city, and we had a substantial regional network.
All over, Tullin Bend, Mount Gambier, Victor Harbour, Gladstone, Peterborough.
All groundwork laid by William Webb.
They called him the Yankee, and he really said, you got me in to do the job, let me do the job.
Webb upgraded the antiquated Islington rail workshops, built new tracks and bridges, and imported new locos from the UK. But his crowning glory was to replace this modest 19th century railway station with his neoclassical palace.
Its stately architecture is seen at its best from the sylvan surroundings of Torrens Lake.
It featured first-class facilities to satisfy the most demanding of passengers.
There was always this belief that if you upgraded the trains, if you made facilities much better, you would actually get a lot more customers using the trains.
Today, the station is in excellent condition, but back in the early 80s was looking a little worse for wear amid a big debate about its future.
Plans for the redevelopment of the Adelaide railway station date back more than 10 years.
There was even talk about demolishing the station building. Didn't get very far, but it was talked about.
Interstate services were moved to Keswick as Webb's Palace became the centrepiece of a major redevelopment, the Asa project.
This will be the largest construction project ever undertaken in the history of this city.
The casino gave the building a new lease on life, with the Hyatt and Convention Centre being built over the tracks. Despite all he achieved, William Webb left SA in 1930.
He left because he fell out of favour with a lot of influential people in the government.
In fact, his lavish expenditure almost drove the state bankrupt, but his legacy lives on.
What he did in that short reign of 8 years was just amazing.
Shoppers were left stunned after a man's daring plunge into an Alabama aquarium. Completely naked, he performed a cannonball leap into the water inside a camping and hunting store. He stripped down after first crashing his car outside the shop. The 42-year-old climbed out after a brief standoff, but fell to the floor below and was knocked down. Among his charges is public lewdness. So much to say about that story, Tom, but I think it's best to keep the thoughts to myself.
Probably best. All I could think of was at least Ron Burgundy kept his clothes on when he did the cannonball into the water.
Very true. Now, Tom, with the New Year's test done, attention now turns to Adelaide Oval in the West Indies.
Yeah, one of the great events on the calendar. 10 days away, the squad will get here on Saturday. Coming up, we'll hear from one of the main contenders who's vying for David Warner's vacant spot at the top of the order. Port Adelaide defender Ryan Burton's ready to bounce back after an up-and-down 2023. And the Adelaide 36ers caused the shock of the season, knocking off ladder leaders Melbourne. Hello again. Cameron Bancroft has delivered an impassioned plea for a test recall, declaring he owes it to his country. Behind the scenes, Steve Smith has been lobbying to replace David Warner for weeks.
With families in tow, the test team disbanding, heading home with 10 days until the West Indies series begins.
Thanks, brother.
Just hours after hitting up Sydney's nightlife to farewell one of Australia's greats. Now they can properly focus on the question, who replaces David Warner?
I want that opportunity. Very bad. Exclamation mark.
6 years after playing his part in the sandpaper scandal, 5 since his last test, Cameron Bancroft says he's a changed and better man.
I feel like I definitely, owe it to my country to, put those lessons, into play. One of the lessons I've probably learnt over the time is to be able to, take control of, your own actions and responsibilities.
Not worried about hard feelings from former teammates.
What's happened is in the past is, it's been and gone now, and I know those guys feel the same.
The leading Shield run scorer of the past 2 seasons as an opener, averaging over 58. It might not be enough.
We'll consider all options.
Steve Smith is dead serious about moving up to opener.
He's mentioned it throughout the last couple of weeks, so it's nice to have him putting his hand up. I think there's a few others that weren't putting their hand up.
Marcus Harris, averaging 25 in 14 tests, has strong support. James Manton, 7 News.
Sixers spinner Todd Murphy has helped end Sydney's 4-game winless run. He was outstanding with 2 for 15 from his 4 overs as the Stars made 4 for 156. After being dropped on 10, James Vince hammered 79 off 57 balls to lead the Sixers to a 7-wicket win.
Cliche, but you want to peak at the back end of the competition. As you say, it's felt stop-start from a playing point of view with a big gap early on.
Tonight it's the Brisbane Heat and the Hobart Hurricanes at the Gabba. Well, Port Adelaide defender Ryan Beaton was the ultimate swingman in 2023, both on and off the footy field. A keen golfer, he'll be part of a star-studded field at the Blitz Golf Final this month, where a hole-in-one shootout will give fans a chance to win $100,000.
2023 was an up-and-down year for power defender Ryan Beaton. In the off-season, he travelled to the home of golf, St Andrews, where he shot a 2-under par 70.
After a 6 a.m. wake up and lined up in the cold for a couple of hours, I managed to get on and, I guess live out a dream. I was a little bit bummed out, actually. I missed a short putt for birdie.
But disappointment was part of his year after missing games throughout the season through suspension and poor form.
Yeah, a little bit inconsistent with my form, so trying to just have a really solid pre-season, get as fit as I can, as strong as I can, and really focus on trying to play that half-back role. And if I end up getting pushed forward again, then I've got to play that role as best as I can.
After 139 games, Beaton believes he still has the most to offer down back, but faces stiff competition after the arrival of Asava Radigalia and Brandon Zerk-Thatcher.
We have to be playing our absolute best footy, and we have to do it all year. So if you have a couple of games that aren't quite up to it, you're probably going to find yourself out of the team.
But first, he'll test himself against some of Australia's best golfers at North Adelaide Golf Course on January 19. Robbie Cornthwaite, 7 News.
The Adelaide 36ers pulled off the upset of the season last night, taking down league leaders Melbourne United 100-96. Celebrating the 25th anniversary of the club's 1998-99 championship, the Sixers came out firing. Adelaide held a 4-point lead at the first break thanks to an inspired first quarter from DJ Vasiljevic.
This should be bread and butter for a man who's feeling it. That is 15 first quarter points, and he's got a bit of swagger about him.
Melbourne cut the lead in the second, but unlike recent weeks, the home side kicked on after half-time. Adelaide was up 15 with 5 minutes to play and held off a late United fight back to win by 4. DJ finished with 30 and was well supported by Trey Kell, who had 24 points and 10 rebounds.
You know, it's easy to get down when you're in these situations, when you've been losing more than not. But incredibly proud of the effort that we put in tonight.
Adelaide remains last on the ladder and hosts Sydney on Thursday. Well, Alex de Minaur will enter the world top 10 for the first time, taking his third top 10 scalp in a week. The 24-year-old Aussie came from a set down to defeat world number 7 Alexander Zverev in the United Cup semi-final. The Demon will be the first Aussie man in the top 10 since Leighton Hewitt in 2006.
Another milestone, but it doesn't finish there. Job's not done. We keep on improving. We keep on trying to get better.
But the Aussies were knocked out by Germany after Ayla Tomiljanović's agonising defeat to Angelique Kerber and a mixed doubles thriller. Well, Adelaide United goalkeeper Joe Gauci started in goal in the absence of injured skipper Matt Ryan as the Socceroos warmed up for the Asian Cup with a 2-0 win over Bahrain. First an own goal, then a second-half Mitch Duke header sealed the win, a match a precursor for what's to come against similar defensive tactics when the tournament begins.
It's always great to play against opposition that play that way, so it was a perfect game that we could have had leading into the Asian Cup.
Australia's Asian Cup kicks off against India on Saturday. And the Road Cycling Nationals went ahead with a tinge of sadness today Tributes flowed for Mel Hoskins, a minute's silence before the women's race, with riders wearing black armbands. Ruby Roseman Gannon beating out 4 previous winners for the title. The men's race was smashed apart by its stars, Luke Platt becoming the first to win 3 titles in a row in 44 years. So he'll be at the Tour Down Under, Gertie, and tonight the Big Bash continues. The Heat versus the Hurricanes. That's live straight after the news.
Thanks, Tom. A betting war is brewing for an iconic pub that carries a unique claim to fame. Tasmania's Southport Hotel has a name befitting to its status as Australia's southernmost pub. And the current owner has one simple request for buyers.
Australia's southernmost pub is on more than a few bucket lists.
A lot of people come down, buy the stubby holders, take a photo of the sign out the front there.
Owner and chef Michael Leder has been at the helm since 2009. He's now putting the Southport Hotel, 100 kilometres from Hobart, on the market.
I've been doing it for a long time, and it's just, I've got other things I'd like to do, and yeah, we're going to move on to new adventures.
There's a bottle shop, fuel station and caravan park, with expressions of interest starting at around $2 million. It serves a set of 150 locals, loyal campers who return every summer, and those exploring Tassie's furthest reaches.
Summertime's really, really busy. Wintertime's it's better than what it used to be. Yeah, a lot of tourists travelling around now.
Michael's found the Southport pub is the perfect opportunity for a career switch. He was a truck driver before taking over. He's just got one demand for any potential owners.
It'd just be nice to see someone sort of come in with a nice fresh approach and eager to do the right thing and look after all the local people.
In other words, keep serving up beers as far south as you can get them. Josh Duggan, 7 News.
Beaton's back after the break with a look at the weather forecast.
The humid conditions are finally on the way out. I'll be back with the full forecast live from the Torrens Weir.
He's triumphed with the Aussies across the world and stars for our strikers. Now, Adelaide's Alex Carey reports to you on 7 News.
I'll take you inside the summer of cricket on 7 News.
Alex Carey takes the catch. Inside the Big Bash, inside the tests, Alex Carey, exclusive to 7 News.
This summer, when the big news happens, turn to 7.
Right across the holiday season.
You could hear the car going fast, really fast. And it's dead end.
7 News will bring you the news when it matters, to always keep you in the know.
Be first to know with 7 News.
For Adelaide's latest news and more, tune in to 5AA Breakfast tomorrow morning.
Time for the weather now with Emily, who joins us again from the Torrens Weir. And Em, it's remained mostly dry in the city today.
Yes, Gertie, we even had some blue skies about this afternoon, but the clouds do look a little more ominous behind me now. There is still the slight chance of showers tonight, but most of the unstable conditions have moved through. While heavy rainfall and thunderstorms lashed parts of the state and some metro suburbs, we only recorded 0.2 mils here in the city. We reached a top of 26 just after 10 a.m. this morning, and our low of 20.6 came just a short time ago. Across the state, the Fleurieu and Kangaroo Island copped a deluge of rain. Cape Willoughby recorded one of the highest rainfalls with 36.6 mils. A low pressure trough about the eastern border will move over the eastern states overnight. A high pressure ridge in the west will move across SA this week. Interstate tomorrow, the wet weather is set to hit the east coast. 30 for Brisbane, 29 for Sydney, 22 and a possible storm in Melbourne, and a sunny 35 in Perth. Back home, a bit of cloud lingering in the far north, 31 for Roxby Downs, 26 for Port Augusta and Port Pirie, a possible morning shower in Clare, 23, 28 for Renmark, 21 for Port Lincoln. Then to the south, the wet weather continues. 22 in Murray Bridge, 19 in Victor Harbour, 23 in Narracourt. A severe thunderstorm warning has been issued for the Flinders, Riverland, Northeast Pastoral and Murray Lands. Downy mildew advice has been issued for the following areas too. In the city tomorrow, 17 overnight before a partly cloudy top of 25. On metro waters, winds southerly to 20 knots, seas increasing to 1.5 metres. Looking ahead, cloud clearing on Tuesday, 25. Then the weather we've been waiting for. Sunny and 27 on Wednesday, 30 on Thursday, 34 on Friday, and a mostly sunny top of 30 on Saturday. So after a cloudy start to the week, the sun is finally coming out to play, which is something we can all look forward to. Gertie.
Thank goodness for that. Thanks, Em. Now let's take a look at what's coming up on Sunrise this week.
As the day breaks,
the news breaks on Sunrise.
The unfolding fire emergency. Breaking news, the Middle East is at flashpoint.
Start with what's unfolding.
The winds have picked up massively.
Start with the team Australia trusts.
One of the biggest issues that's facing the country at the moment.
Start with Sunrise.
That's all the news to now. I'll have updates throughout the evening from all the 7 Adelaide team. For now, it's good night.